What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Classy Lady Sparkle with We Talk Weekly, and we are in the building today. We have an amazing interview for you all, a very exclusive interview. I want to give a shout out to Charles and Lauren, who are not in the house with us this evening, but we also have a very special guest who has joined our team. He calls himself DSJ, but I'm gonna call him Daryl and let him give his own introduction. What's up,
Hello
DSJ?
again. This is Daryl Smith Jr. And yes, they said I needed a name, so I will go by DSJ.
That's what's up. And this is our first time that Daryl and I have been in the studio together.
Yes.
Daryl joined our team a couple weeks ago, so this is going to be even more special that Daryl and I are in here today. So, Daryl, how was your day?
Well, the rain got in the way. I am the director of community engagement intervention work within the 16th and 19th police district. So we had a block cleanup on the 7500 block of Rose Street, and the rain said, no, sir, not today. So we will be moving it into May 6th. That is our following Saturday, and we hope to be able to clean that block and then continue on and having monthly block cleanups. In addition to our monthly block cleanups, we have monthly parent cafes, we have other workshops and giveaways, and so feel free to go on Instagram and follow TP, the number 4C, CUA 10 to stay up to date with all that we do in the community every week.
Awesome. Okay.
How about you, Sparkle? How was your day?
I had a good day. It's kind of rainy here in Philadelphia. April showers bring May flowers, but my mother calls it liquid sunshine. So I would rather have the rain than the snow. And we haven't had
yes.
snow this this year. We had a little sprinkles, but nothing where how it is, being a native of Philadelphia. You guys know how that is. All right. Well, we want to get into this exclusive interview. Are you ready for this, DSJ?
I'm so ready.
All right, so without further ado, let me introduce Miss Helen Gym. Helen Gym is a tough Philly mom, a teacher, a longtime community organizer, and a former city council member. She has spent her career fighting for our communities to be safe, educated, healthy, and prosperous. Now, Helen is running for mayor because Philadelphia needs a proven leader who will fight for the city we call home and knows how to get results. Helen's been doing it this way before she had a formal title or political power, and she's not stopping anytime soon. Y'all already know what to do. Let's give a warm We Talk Weekly welcome to Helen Gym.
Yeah, we got you.
Welcome, Helen. We thank you so much for coming in on this, like I said, liquid sunshiny day in your beautiful red blazer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's so nice to be with everybody tonight.
So we did an update on our days. Tell us how your day was going so far.
My day was amazing.
Yeah.
We spent the day out in neighborhoods and communities throughout Philadelphia. It's raining, and of course, our volunteers and supporters might have gotten a little bit wet, but what it means is everybody's at home.
That's
So
right.
we knocked thousands of doors. We knocked 20,000 doors last weekend. We're going to knock even more this weekend.
Okay.
So it was energetic. And then right before I came, I got to hang out at the William Way Center with Galet, and they had an amazing drag show with black and brown drag performers and just a celebration of identity, self, and power.
Wonderful. Oh, you really had a great day today. I mean, that's amazing. Well, we thank you again for being here. This is a historical time for Philadelphia, being as though this is the 100th mayoral, candidates are now. It's like, I think, two things. One, the 100th mayor of Philadelphia, and then two, this is the largest panel of candidates, potential candidates for mayors. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was. It got whittled down as people have pulled out.
Yeah.
But yes.
But initially, this has been the first time, and I think that that's a good thing. Some people are looking at it from a negative perspective. I'm looking at it that people want change in Philadelphia. So with that, with change, tell us, Helen, what change are you willing to bring to Philadelphia?
Yeah, well, I hope that people want more than change. I want people to want transformation. A lot of times in Philadelphia, we get sold the idea that just because the faces change, that's the amount of change that we can settle with. But right now, we've got a bunch of people who are running for office, and I'm running to change the way people actually live in this city. And that's a very different thing. Long before I ever came into political office, I was an organizer in communities. I started out as a teacher in Alney, where I would support a lot of my young people in a grossly underfunded school system. And I take the 47 bus down through Fifth Street and all throughout the city into Chinatown, where I try to work with communities to stop neighbors from being displaced by big development. And to me, like, that whole lesson from decades ago was you get the city that you fight for. And a lot of times I think my politics, my work, and my perspective has been formed outside of halls of power. It's been formed when people didn't have somebody or all the things went wrong. When, as I said, neighbors were being displaced, families were in unsupported school systems, immigrant communities were being deported, or people that we loved were being torn apart by a DHS system that was indifferent to them. And so, a lot of times people say, like, communities don't have a vision, but I was only in places where I felt like people had a bigger vision than anything that ever got sold to us in City Hall. And when I decided to run for city council, it was after a mayor had closed down 30 public schools and slashed funding for libraries and rec centers and after school programs. And I wanted to come in and say, if we step into this space, if these communities that work so hard outside of politics stepped in, then everything had to be different. You couldn't just sell like, oh, I'm in there and that's good enough. So that's why I helped end that state takeover of our public schools and put nurses and counselors and social workers and delivered safe drinking water to every single child. And I want more than that. That's why we took on like a system that took out, that used to evict 100,000 people a year, like 22,000 households. And it was sold to us as being efficient. And, we came in, led with communities and families and single moms and veterans and seniors, and said, no, this isn't efficient, this is inhumane, and slashed the number of evictions by 2/3, kept people housed, helped fund, small and large landlords, and made sure that this city put itself on the right track. And I think we want more than that. And that's what this campaign is about. It's about people who have long labored outside of the halls of power, and we want more. And we should expect more than just a change in a face in Philly politics. We need a transformative vision about how people are going to live in the city, how young people are going to get educated, and how people have to rise.
I've been listening to a lot of your interviews and a lot of your debates, and a lot of my questions are going to revolve around the how. And so for me, everything you just said, I am all for, and I applaud you for what you've done for our city thus far. But next, I want to know the how. Specifically for Black and brown men, how will you help Black and brown men grow? How will you invest in us? How will you support us? How will you help us become the men and fathers that we have the potential to be?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. Like I said, I think that one of the biggest things that we have to think about is that these things aren't just done by accident. They have to be purposeful. And I personally feel like the violence in our city, the disinvestment is purposeful. Whether it's intended or not, everything is geared towards a disinvestment kind of framework. So if we come in, then everything has to be geared towards a purposeful investment framework. So I've talked about the importance of what city budgets can do when we put Black men, employment opportunities, and real supports like front and center. So everything has to change. That means that, from get-go, we're not using our DHS system to pull families apart. We're supporting strong young people, strong families, and strong support networks. It's why I've made sure that housing is central, that food access and support services are not something that we leave to the sidelines. Why I'm going to invest every single dollar that we've got in our public schools and in our civic spaces so that, you create like a community around people. But, in particular, because I work with a lot of young people that go through the child welfare or the juvenile justice system when like things fall apart for everybody. And I'm trying to stitch together the things that get us back into like stronger support networks. And they don't always just happen from individuals. Like I think we just hyper individualize blame, and we don't create like things around people to support and reinforce. A core part of my agenda is about providing guaranteed employment in particular. This is not about job fairs and promises of apprenticeships that never make their way into people's lives. This is like an actual subsidized jobs program that goes out into neighborhoods and communities. It's one of the things that I've felt really committed to, particularly for youth and teenagers in, in the summer times, but also for young adults, especially under the age of 30, who are coming back or in and around the carceral system, because I need to have everything in our city just working to keep, people in a community fold and not out onto streets fending for themselves. I've talked a lot about the importance of making sure we have, a city that has a commerce department that actually works for communities. So we're the first city in the country to really embed the idea that we should be responsible for our own economic development. That's why we created a commerce department. Commerce department is 1/4% of our budget, and it feels like that's all the space that they occupy. They don't like go out and staff things. A lot of it is liaisoning with big businesses that already have their lobbyists all over City Hall. I want a commerce department that talks about like economic opportunity, commerce in the big idea of like the exchange of goods and services that create healthy, vibrant, circular communities of support, so that's not extractive. It doesn't take money from one community and just take it outside of there. But I need the city to do that work. Like no one's doing that for us.
And that's my question.
The
So
big one.
you hit a lot of layers. We know that specifically in the Black and brown community in Philadelphia, that there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of guns. There's a lot of crime from the Black community and brown community. What is it that you feel as though, as a mayoral candidate, that's the problem? Like, where is that starting from? Is it the lack of education and resources? Is it the minimum wage that Philadelphia hasn't been, proposed as to update the minimum wage? New York City, Delaware, all of the tri-state other areas have, but not Philadelphia. What do you think it is on why Philadelphia's crime rate, specifically guns, is so high?
Yeah. So to me, I don't reside it in just one thing. Violence is about disinvestment that starts early on. You can see it in neighborhoods and communities. It doesn't have to be, you don't need to know a lot of the crime statistics to know when a community feels not only just violent but disinvested in, which to me, disinvestment is the seeds of violence. It's telling people you don't matter and that we won't care and that things will go away and we won't do anything about it. We may pay lip service for it, but actually nothing changes. So, violence starts at the earliest age. When a child is 5 years old and goes to a school and there's no nurse and there's no counselor, there's no arts and music, there's only remedial education at best. When children don't have like Black teachers and mentors around them, when children don't get to speak languages, that they speak at home. To me, these are the seeds of violence. They're telling people from the youngest age that people don't matter. And so, if you think that violence is about disinvestment, then safety has to be about investment, because there's no amount of back end work that we can do if we're telling people from the very youngest ages that we're going to walk away from who you are and what you can be. That's why I've spent so much time talking about education, not because I think it's just one issue, because I think it's a mindset. If you can disinvest in a child, you will disinvest in their parents, you will disinvest in their families, you will disinvest in their neighborhoods and communities, and we see it time and time again. Violence is rooted in neighborhoods that are disinvested in consistently. It's redlining, it's segregation, it is a minimum wage, absolutely, those are the externals, but it starts even more insidiously, like right at home. And so for me, the investment then is open up your door, clean up the streets, brighten up the lights, invest, take on the illegal dumping that is surrounding neighborhoods and communities concentrated with violence. Take those things seriously. Go for every single thing that's under my control. Everything that I control, I have to control. That means 7-day-a-week libraries and rec centers that are open at evening aren't just a bunch of services run by Parks and Rec and the free library system. It is an anti-violence, pro-investment, pro-people kind of approach towards restoring some sense of sanity and investment back into neighborhoods and communities. And of course, I believe in what I'm trying to do is create this idea that we need to create hubs of resilience in neighborhoods and communities. Hubs of resilience means every single asset that's on the table, from your school to your rec center, from your economic corridor, has to become vibrant in a way that we have failed to do before. It's not about finding change under the couch and throwing a few pennies here and there. It's about reorienting our budgets, because if you're saying that you care about violence, then invest in the communities that have been disinvested in time and time again.
You touched on a couple things, and I definitely want to circle back to education because that's my wheelhouse. But I want to stay where we are, and I want to talk about investment. If we look at our city as a business, the mayor is the CEO, and we can look at council as middle management. It's only so much you will be able to do solely as mayor. How will you be able to work with council? How will you be able to engage your old colleagues to support your plans, to fund your plans?
Yeah. So one, I believe, as mayor, I'm very well aware that we're not going to be able to fix, everything if I look at just the numbers that we've got. But I'm never somebody who just looks at what we've got and say, let's do the least that we can do. My belief is that a mayor is supposed to lead a big investment initiative, not only through city council, but throughout the entire city. I've got to get private actors, our nonprofit institutions, all of our different agencies, state and federal government, being excited about what we do right here at home, because it solves big problems. And, one of the ways that I've done it, first and foremost, I always lead with the people's vision. When you meet people's needs, not what we can do as capacity, but when we seek to meet people's needs, these ideas resonate. They're not just popular, but they're political powerhouses, because you're actually going out and meeting people's needs. Second, you have to have a big vision for the city ahead. If I keep my head down and look at everything around me, I'm going to shrink into this moment. And that's not what you can do. A mayor has to look beyond this moment to pull people up and out. So you've got to talk about the city that we're believing in, a city where neighborhoods are vibrant, where youth are educated and supported, and where neighbors know that housing, healthcare, and real economic opportunity are a right and not just something that we talk about pie in the sky. And then we need to start putting some real dollars on the table. I've talked about, for example, a big Green New Deal for our schools to modernize them so we don't have schools closing down left and right. And surprise, surprise, you got a bunch of people saying, oh, these are pie in the sky. We shouldn't talk about it. What are you talking about? In 10 years, you don't think that we can have schools that are air conditioned and are modern with playgrounds and bathrooms that don't flood and roofs that don't leak? Lower Merion just built a $90 million middle school for 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, talking about the modern school where they're going to teach 10-year-olds how to become collaborative, creative, brilliant learners. And I got kids who are playing on broken asphalt and can't get summer camp because we don't fund it. There's no way that we talk about this work and get sold a bunch of ideas we ought to be, dreaming about ridiculous things for billionaires and other types of people, or big corporate tax cuts. And we don't talk about investing in ourselves. That's what keeps Philadelphia small. So for me, I'm leading with that big vision, but I need the people to lead that vision, not council necessarily. All of us in City Hall are accountable to the people. And if you just leave it to the same politics within City Hall, nothing ever changes in this town. But if you let the politics be guided by the people of the city, who've made very clear they want an end to the violence, they want real investments, they want education, they want real jobs that are delivered to communities, not just promise, not just, kind of on the side, but real jobs and real economic opportunity delivered. Watch the politics of City Hall change, because I have seen that happen. If I didn't, like I said, if I felt like it was just about politics in a given moment, none of my bills would ever pass. Bills that stop people from being evicted, for example. But when we demonstrated, one, that it solved a big problem, that it was actually a good program, and it brought in investments from other people. Everything in City Hall changed. And it's the same thing that we can do on how we tackle violence and how we do investments. But it's not going to be with the smallest things that we've got. And council and City Hall aren't the only people who get to make the decisions. When people come in and they put us back to where we're supposed to be, back in communities, back in investments, the politics of City Hall actually does change. And I don't say that just because, it's something to say. I say it because I've done it. I've seen it.
Now, Philadelphia, as we know, has a very high rate of crime. And for anyone who's eager to sit in that, as DSJ said, in that CEO seat, it's like, what miracle can you bring? Do you know what I mean? It's like for someone to want to be mayor of Philadelphia right now, that's a heavy load, because now you're fixing things that was, with the crime rate, with the poverty. It's like a three-part question that I have for you. One, there are business owners, small business owners in Philadelphia who are upset. They're upset because of the taxes, some of the criterias that they have to do. There are some nonprofit organizations that I know specifically who want to give to the communities, but the funds aren't available. But Philadelphia has all of this money. If you were to be mayor, what would the first thing you do in your position as mayor of Philadelphia?
So that's help me, talk a little bit about this. I mean, obviously, I think the first thing that we're doing is, you have to deal with the safety issues. I know you talked a lot about small businesses, and I'd love to be able to talk about that for a little bit. But the day one issue is about safety, and it's a broad vision of safety. So I've made very clear that on day one, we would declare gun violence a public health emergency in the city. We're going to coordinate all of our city efforts around making sure that you've got all levels of law enforcement, but also multiple other agencies that are responsible for what I believe is a safe city. Our behavioral health department, our public health department, our school district, SEPTA, PHA, housing authorities, and other things. Those are also core to safety. I don't think that they traditionally get done in the safety network or framework, but they are absolutely core to what it means for people to be safe, as well as streets and services and cleaning.
So your day ones is to address those organizations?
Pull all these different agencies together to make sure that we have a coordinated plan on how to keep people safe. That absolutely starts with taking illegal guns off the street. It's about fixing our 911 response system, because when people call for help, they should know that help is on the way. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest problems that we've got. We're pulling everything together so that we can make sure that we solve crimes. I think one of the most lawless things about Philadelphia is that people get away with it. They do it in broad daylight. They create harm in communities, and we don't solve the crimes. So that doesn't start for me, though, with hiring all these police officers. I will absolutely be able to fill vacancies. But even if somebody talked about hiring police officers from cadet to uniform and onto the street on a very basic level, has to be at least a year. No one wants to wait a year. My plan talks about promoting more detectives, training and promoting more detectives so we can relieve caseloads and actually help solve crimes, investing in a modern forensics lab and other types of technology so we can do things in the absence of witnesses, making sure that we put non-police mental health crisis units that I helped start when I was on city council in the wake of Walter Wallace out into communities, because a lot of the calls that come into 911 are about things that police officers can't really do that much about it. When they show up, they don't do much about it. Homelessness, addiction, mental health emergencies, certain types of domestic violence that don't involve a weapon when you're trying to de-escalate. So I'm trying to create and support a big workforce that actually invests in a lot of these response efforts so that our police officers can actually do their jobs. And I think that does meet a lot of the concerns that we hear both from residents and small business owners.
Right. And I know that DSJ has a question, but I did speak briefly on the small businesses as nonprofit. Can you just briefly address why the Philadelphians, citizens of Philadelphia, small business owners are upset and also why nonprofit organizations that have been natives of Philadelphia who want to give back to this community are not seeing the funds, and Philadelphia has the funds.
I talked earlier about how we have a commerce department that was supposed to be all about economic development and our own generated economic development, and it occupies 1/4 of 1% of our budget, and a lot of it is just about liaisoning with some of the largest businesses in the city of Philadelphia. We have a corporate mindset in Philadelphia government. We don't have a small business mindset. I come out of a lot of communities which have been traditionally shut out of the big business corporate sphere. And so a lot of it is about talking about small business, entrepreneurship, access to capital, supports, internal circular in community types of investments. And I want our city to do the same. So rather than pursue these broad-based kind of tax cuts, I've talked a lot about the importance of tax cuts that are targeted towards small businesses, where actually it gets directly into, like, this is a little technical, but raising up like a BERT exemption, for example, erases out the amount of money that is actually taxed. That is a small business strategy. Making sure that we provide opportunity and equity funds that are specifically directed towards Black and Brown business development, attraction, growth, and startups is a specific and targeted practice for this. It's making sure that we look at a commerce department that creates business service hubs in neighborhoods and communities, because a lot of small businesses don't have multiple people working for them, bookkeepers, lobbyists, lawyers, accountants, and everything. So I need to bring those services out into neighborhoods and communities so we can solve all these problems, so businesses that are smaller don't run around from like fixing health department, fixing L&I, going to like revenue department, clearing things with like these different fines, more like a one-stop shop out into neighborhoods and businesses. So the city comes out to communities, not that people have to chase us down in City Hall, which I think drives people mad and like is the result. And most importantly, we don't create new businesses. Like that's just really the bottom line. We don't have creativity. We're still locked into a lot of, like chain kinds of places that are usually selling minimum wage jobs. This is not a place for growth and, not always the best place for growth in our city. And it certainly hasn't been transformative around the poverty rate. So why keep pursuing that strategy? Why not take all that energy and redirect it back home, back into neighborhoods and communities, and take that small business focus and let big business, they're going to be able to do what they're going to do. But, small businesses need that liaison, need that direct support right there, and a city hall that is responsive and responsible for them.
Okay.
I have to be honest that I'm really liking a lot of what you're saying, and I like the access. I like the going into the city. I really appreciate hearing that. I'll be also honest and say that I let people know we will be interviewing you, and so I got a lot of questions. And one thing people really want to hear from you is about the 76ers arena prospectively being located in Chinatown. They would like to hear a kind of solid position you have on it and any information you have based on conversations that you have had.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much information that's out there at all about this. There have been no impact studies. There have been no real financing things. And look, like I said, I think East Market Street is littered with broken promises and over decades and billions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies. I've seen it happen time and time again. I've always been very clear about, big things. Neighborhoods have to thrive. They are the heartbeat of our city. Residents are here, they pay taxes, they need to thrive and grow, and billionaires don't need tax subsidies. I don't know, like the owner of the 76ers, I mean, people can say as much as they want. I don't believe for 1 minute that there will be no public subsidy going to that project. And two, they just put down $6 billion. Josh Harris just put down $6 billion to buy a division rival of the Eagles. Okay, let's make that clear about when we're talking about pro-Philadelphia. He went to buy the Washington Commanders, an actual division rival of the Eagles. So let's get clear about who is going to be in the public interest and who's going to serve private interests. I'm not going to run around and do somersaults for a business when I've got like an empty spot all the way going down from City Hall all the way down to the river. I believe also, another thing for listeners to know, no matter what happens, if those doors ever open, they won't happen for another 10 years, right? Like the earliest they open is 2032. I'm not waiting that long.
Right.
I'm not waiting that long to get business going. I'm not waiting that long to get small businesses moving throughout Market Street. I don't want to wait that long when we could be taking action. We could be doing commercial rent assistance to get some of these empty storefronts moving. We could be paying working artists to keep that area vibrant. Why is the only way in which we're interpreted as like caring about economic development only when a billionaire is involved? I'm not saying that I'm never going to see this project come to fruition. I want big development to come here. I want people to be excited about the city. But I'm going to look out for the public interest first. I'm going to make sure that our tax dollars and our tax money goes to subsidize local small businesses in Philadelphia first and foremost. And I'm going to make sure that neighborhoods thrive. And that isn't just by saying, oh, let's work it out. Chinatown, and I've been part of it, has weathered decades of people pushing communities out. And it is an example of a neighborhood that has small business, that has residents, that is still like a vibrant mixed income area that is trying to hold on in a world in which we're trying to shove all those folks out of this area and push people away. It's, when we actually invest in diverse, on the ground communities, small businesses, mixed use places, we grow Philadelphia. That is what's unique about our city. I just need us to see that, not just in Chinatown, but in neighborhood after neighborhood across Philadelphia. We never see ourselves. Like, that's the thing that makes me like kind of most passionate about Philadelphia. Like, nobody is going to fight harder for Philadelphia than Philadelphians themselves, but we need to see ourselves. We need to value ourselves, not how other people see us, especially like big billionaires and others. I need them to see us, our own capacity to grow, transform, and create the most vibrant, creative things that everybody wants to end up being.
Yeah.
Atlanta, Austin, Texas, they're vibrant places because they invested in culture, they invested in Black and brown and immigrant businesses that made them unlike any other city in America. Philadelphia should do the same. We don't need to chase other people's dreams. We have to create and allow our people to enact their dreams. And when we become the place that Philadelphians want to be, we'll become the place that other people want to be.
Do you believe we've ever had that at one point?
I think we've had that. I think we've had visions about how to revitalize. I often think that a lot of it's been led by communities themselves, which is why I spend a lot more time listening to communities around what we think that we can do rather than through the limited ideas of city halls and political legislatures that, do that. And I think, communities right now are more creative, more hungry, more independent, more aggressive right now about doing things for themselves.
Right.
And I think that City Hall needs to be more in service of that. And what we can do is I can leverage in all the power of the city to surround it and then uplift it up.
I have two questions. I know we're running out of time, so DSJ does have some questions. I'm going to give you two questions briefly as you can. One, what are your thoughts on legalization of cannabis or marijuana?
Pro.
Okay. And also, two, what are your thoughts on gentrification within Philadelphia?
So, I mean, obviously I'm against gentrification, but I want to grow and develop the city, right?
Okay.
I think gentrification is when the market is like incentivized to push people to see a bizarre, out of whack form of development that's concentrated in private ownership. I see growth and development not so much in where people live, but how people live. So I need communities. I said earlier that I believe in communities being like places of resilience. And so when I look at development of a community, I'm looking at the health and well-being of individuals, concentrations of like making sure that there's always a place for people to get health care that is free and accessible and available.
So more like a revitalization
Yes.
of Philadelphia.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a very good, that's a better way of putting
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I
That
like
is,
that.
I like that much better. Yes, because
Right.
like a lot of people that we talk about development, and it's always just in terms of private housing. And that's not
Right.
a developed community. That's just a bunch of like people who have money who can get it.
Yeah.
Revitalization of a neighborhood and community goes beyond just your private house.
Yeah.
It goes into a focused use of the city, thinking and looking at it and saying, let's make sure that there's healthcare available. Let's make sure the economic corridor is vibrant. Let's make sure that the school is anchoring things. Let's make sure there's a diversity of childcare and after school programs and a wealth of supports around vibrant parks and rec centers and libraries, transit systems that are vibrant. And then let's talk about how communities, before I do all the other incentives on the private development, let's see how people live, and let's make sure that housing is core, and it's mixed use and all of that. And that's how I think people develop, not just development happens to us.
Yeah. Okay.
So I quickly want to say shout out to the good brother Charles. He definitely was a part of that 76ers question.
Yes.
Given the historic nature of this election, we want to make sure that everyone we interview has the opportunity to clarify and clear any missteps, any mistakes, any mishaps. And so, your space, safe space. Do you have anything you would like to elaborate or add to previous statements that you tweeted about your visit to the Urban League a week after they honored Ron DeSantis?
Yeah, I think that I've made very clear that I apologized immediately. I think that place is a place of harm. I've been very clear that I protested the Union League for many decades, not just that Ron DeSantis. And, Ron DeSantis's horrendous anti-Black, anti-democratic, xenophobic, anti-immigrant stances do not have any place here. And I am deeply apologetic about having attended an event there that was totally separate from anything to do with the union, with the Ron DeSantis Union League honoring, was not, tweeted my support of the protest. And, I'm very well aware that, the harm and the pain it causes when people do that. But I also hope that people have the grace to judge me by a track record of work. I mean, this idea that I secretly support Ron DeSantis or his policies or the Union League or anything like that is not reflected in any of my work. And I think what I'm most apologetic and sorry about is that it came across that it could have been looking like that. But I do think that over 30 years that I have tried to live my life in a way that demonstrates a commitment to communities. And I will make mistakes. Like, no one is going to be perfect in this role. And I hope that, again, as I said, that I have the grace to be judged by a track record of work. And that, I will commit to making sure that those policies, those attitudes, and that hate never has a place in Philadelphia.
All right.
Thank you for that. So we're going to wrap up. And so I would like you to elaborate and expand on what puts you in the best position to lead our city. Why you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Philadelphia needs a transformation, and there are a lot of people who have played it safe all their lives who are running for office. They've stayed in the political elected spaces. They've been austerity bureaucrats that have sold us what we can't have and what we don't deserve. Or they've chosen to make money hand over fist. And they want to step into this space and talk about, how they want to lead. And when you listen to them, I will say that I think their ideas are too small for this moment. Mm-hmm. They've often said, my plans are too big. I think their ideas are too small. And they talk about safety only in terms of policing. They talk about economic development in terms of corporate tax cuts. And we need more than that. There has been 30 years of people outside of the halls of power bringing and developing and creating a vibrant Philadelphia that City Hall doesn't see right now. Doesn't see, doesn't fund, doesn't necessarily understand or value. I come out of many of those communities, people who never got seen or valued, but it turned out we were the ones who led on the care and keeping of our young people and the right to have a decent public school. We are the ones who led on the right for housing to be a actual priority here in the city of Philadelphia when 400,000 people live below the poverty line. And I got tax abatements going for $700,000 properties. You know, we're the people who helped deliver safe drinking water to every single child. We're the people who went out and made sure that we got labor rights and unionization in a $7.25 an hour state. And we've made this city sit up and pay attention, to take a look at what's around us and not be sold this idea that all we get to have is just this changing of faces and that's enough for the changing of the guard. But no one really changed. Our politics are frozen, they're static, they're old, and our people are falling apart because of it. 4,000 kids dropped out of school last year. 3,600 kids have dropped out of school since September. We are losing ourselves. And so I'm running for office to finish a job that I started 30 years ago when I was that teacher, knowing that this city had to fulfill the dreams of every young person, their family members, and the neighbors, the neighborhoods in which they lived. And I think that I'm the person that's going to try and do everything I can. You know, we only have 17 days, so you'll see me laboring for the next 17 days. But I hope you see 30 years of work. I hope you see communities, you know, that always stood up for ourselves, never stayed silent. You know, as I said, you know, well, they built corporate towers, we built power.
Right.
Power in communities. And I think that's what this election, I hope, will be about as much as it is about who's going to be the 100th mayor.
And with that passion, and you said for 30 years, in the event that you were not elected mayor, what would you still continue to do for the city of Philadelphia?
I always said that I'm going back home to my communities one way or another. I'm either going to bring City Hall back to the community or I'm going back home. And I will be as active and engaged and passionate as ever in building the Philadelphia that I know is possible. And I will be cheering on the 100th and the 101st and the 102nd mayor of the city of Philadelphia.
Awesome, awesome.
Amazing.
Okay, yes. Okay, so as we wrap up this interview, we would like for you to look into the camera and tell everyone where they can find more information and how to support Helen Gym.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. It's a joy to be with Sparkle and with DSJ.
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
On the show, you can go to helengym.com. You can look at our platform and our reviews. You can donate. You can sign up to volunteer. We got 17 days until the election day. And here's what I will tell a lot of people. There's a lot of polls out there. You don't need to listen to them. Polls can't measure transformation. Polls can't measure hope, and polls can't measure change. So vote for change, transformation, and hope. And I hope you'll vote for Helen Gym on May 16th.
All right.
There you have it.
That's it.
Wonderful Helen Gym.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming to We Talk Weekly. We really appreciate you. We appreciate everything you said and everything you shared. It's wonderful having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you guys know what to do. Don't go anywhere. Keep it here and keep it locked.